Hello. I'm about to talk about the recent concept video that I uploaded. I will include it on this video as well, but it may have been seen already on my Instagram or Facebook page or Vimeo. I uploaded it a few days before Christmas, so the plan is and was to actually talk about it because I've not really said much about it, what the concepts or the trajectory of that is yet, and with that sets a nice platform to explain the next few key dates in the calendar. It's been a little while since I've checked in. I have to state right off the bat that running into December, I really burnt myself into the ground a bit, which I'm not surprised about. And I'd made a point to myself for a while, anticipating that I would go into 2020 with a bit more of a healthy work ethic. So that's going to have some consequence, implication, whatever you want to call it, in terms of the key dates coming up that I have to mention, because it does all conveniently relate to this video. It is this concept video very much is the culmination of a lot of things across many years, actually, that I've dipped in and out of through both the visual practice and the and musical experiments a bit further back before that, and then things have popped up and gone away, but not quite fully gone away, and then come back up again. And there are key ideas at the centre of it, which I may kind of somewhat brush upon now, but will become a lot more evident in the next couple of months as I have a presentation that I'm giving as part of the UCA alumni thing in London in a few months' time. That will be the point where I will have to be a lot clearer about all these ideas. It will be my first formal presentation since being on the MA, and a lot has progressed and refined since then, but I can't, other than sort of ambiguously alluding to key central ideas, there's going to be a lot of thinking about preparation to that point. I'm going to be a bit, I'm less dialed in my presentation skills now, and I think part of that is just because I haven't done one of these for about a fortnight. I found when I was doing them consistently, I noticed over the course of months that I was getting a bit more dialed in and concise with my explanations. Then it sort of wavered a bit, which is going to be doing now, but I will push myself to plough on and not dither too much. It will all pick up again next month, and then I think it's in March or April, this actual presentation I'm talking about will happen, which I will video. I will record that. Conveniently, this whole kind of podcast vlogging endeavor kind of has built me up to that, is building me up to that over a timeline. The timeline is convenient. I'm also on the tail end of a bit of a viral thing, so that's compromising my presentation skills a little bit, but it is New Year's Eve as I'm recording this. I would just like to get this in the bag, really. So first thing I will do is play the video. I'll just have it play now.
Watch the words lose meaning, has, drive, leads, cause, to, listen, to,
somewhere
words,
here there
lose,
exists
meaning,
the
has,
space be
drive,
content that's
leads,
right there.
cause,
You
to,
are
some,
rising
listen,
where here
to,
there exists
words,
the space be
meaning,
content
has,
that's right there.
drive,
You are
leads,
rising where
cause,
here
to,
there exists
listen,
the space be
words,
content that's
lose,
right there.
meaning,
You
has,
are
some,
rising
drive,
where here there
leads,
exists
words,
the
to,
space be
listen,
content that's
words,
right there.
words,
You are
meaning,
rising, falling,
words,
rising, falling,
lose,
rising, falling,
meaning,
rising,
words,
rising,
lose, meaning, leads to watch
So that is it.
the
Like my
words,
previous
lose,
video pieces, they are looped seamlessly. There's the point that it can just keep going and going, and there's no clear definition of beginning and end. And the choice of words that you hear that you hear spoken are also set in such a way that one word leads coherently to another, and so on and so forth. But the more, if you were to just let it loop seamlessly, there would be no clear beginning of a sentence or end of a sentence. It's just a one flowing thing. And obviously, looking at my previous animated pieces, that seems to be a key thing that I'm drawn to. It has a lot of video installation application, but I'm beginning to learn now, particularly now that this concept video has come together, that it's also a means of stockpiling elements that I can use to incorporate and manipulate and combine in different ways for the effect that had. And so hopefully I build up a few more similar continual elements like that can all just stockpile and become part of this big visual sort of collage, really, alongside the music. So to talk about the music, I had done a lot of experiments with pulsing sounds like were audible in that video. I was doing that a few years ago. That was a brief foray into music production. I mean, it was always something that interested me, and I played around with a lot as a teenager and early 20s. But then a few years ago, I had another crack at this particular idea of pulsing, fluctuating sounds. Gave it a whirl for a while, and then there came a point where the visual art picked up a bit more. There was enough interest in that for me to just think, fuck it, I'm going to focus in on this entirely for a bit until I make money out of it several years later. Yeah, it doesn't work like that, obviously. I have gotten publicity and done a number of things that look good in a portfolio, but the whole idea of any day now, this will get me a skiing holiday thing is I'm more humbled by at the moment. So it had been a key thought, I think, for the most of 2019 to start to incorporate the music again, because I accepted that this is something that I enjoy doing, and if I keep putting things off for the sake of growth, professional growth or whatever, then I'm going to drive myself insane, even if I was to suddenly make a significant profit. But it all kind of turns around in an appropriate way now. So the pulsing ideas, I was very interested in hypnosis and NLP. I trained in those towards the end of my BA, and actually looking back at some of the work I did on my BA towards the end, it does seem to feed into familiar things that everything is now. And that is interesting because that's almost a decade ago, and it kind of the key sort of ideas are beginning to bubble up, the connective bits between all of these different musical experiments and these visual experiments and everything else, and all the stuff that I rambled on about either on here or on essays during one or another course. So yeah, there's binaries, the ideas of contrasting yin yang, which is applied visually as well as auditory. From the musical standpoint, the pulses came somewhat from the idea of brainwave frequencies. There was use of binaural beats, which I don't really have time to talk about, but that's a thing. Look it up if you're wondering. Other sort of hypnotic effects, and that feeds into the use of language as well. The way language can kind of just trail off and seem to be making sense, but only in the moment. And obviously that the binaries are contrasting elements and everything I've talked about before in terms of the visual work as well. So that's all marrying together. And I think I had vague visions of the kind of stuff that I'm looking at now from this concept video. I think there was inclinations ruminating in me a few years ago of that kind of outcome. I always wanted in some way to produce some kind of performance multimedia experience that could either be performance based or just in a cinema like setting, or more musically orientated with big ambitious kind of visuals, one or another kind of applications along those lines. So yeah, and I shan't talk more about those sort of key binaries, digital physics, and all that sort of that line of thinking anymore, because that's what the next few months are going to be for me, mulling that kind of stuff over to make a formal presentation, which at this London thing, which I will record and upload, and maybe that will set the platform for however I want to, should we say, intellectually push this or anything. Whether I'm still mulling over in my head the idea of making a sufficient proposal for a PhD, or if not, something else that sort of satiates a few similar things but down a different route. I don't know. So yes, the technical applications are ongoing. Now, as I said before, I really kind of ran myself into the ground just practically in terms of producing material for this video. For this other project I haven't finished yet, which I can't talk about, but we'll talk about once it's finished, possibly next week. This, yeah, what was I saying? Overload has meant that I've cut corners from the original sort of plan that I had in mind, and there is still a plan to produce a few more 1 minute long or shorter, very condensed sort of pieces. But for instance, the use of After Effects and some of the more kind of technical or subtle, nuanced layering effects, like the ones in that concept video, were not possible in the time. I need a bit of, need a little more kind of familiarizing with those tools. But that being said, the bare bones of what the idea was, the ideas, everything like that is all I'm very satisfied with. Any and every point that I wanted to hit in that concept video. And I think it just by itself, without me explaining at all, should illustrate to anyone who's vaguely familiar with my work where I'm intending to progress it. So, yeah, that seems to be a coherent explanation. I will make a very quick summary of key points over 2019 and how that informs the dates next year, which is interesting actually. I mean, I took a lot of time and investment in things that I will not be doing come this new year at all. Partly practical resource reasons and just sanity, maintaining or recultivating some sense of sanity. So firstly, like last January, there was an exhibit, Osmosis, which was a group exhibit between me and a few MA students. We had finished the September prior to that, and I booked that space in Whitstable, which was a good way of starting the year. And I was quite pleased actually with some very large board ink, big sort of ink on board pieces with one of my video pieces inverted on a little monitor in the center. Two or three of those I really liked, and that was kind of an interesting one because it was different, a huge shift in scale. It was a bit of a random thing that took a different approach to what I normally did. And then and from the course of then, I think there was lots of little fine tuning professionally in terms of tidying up my website, which has had one more tidy up just earlier today, in fact. There was a couple of exhibits, I think. Oh yeah, later on that, springtime, there was a group one, UCA related one at the Beanie in Canterbury, where I did that Canterbury Cross iteration and something else, and that then developed into something else a bit later in the summer, where I produced those garments, which still might have some potential, but honestly I'm not in any rush at the moment now. It's a matter of exchanging a lot of lengthy phone calls and emails again, which I'll just have to get around to when I do, to market those. And speaking of marketing, there was a few art fairs. Did my last one a couple of weeks ago, and that's not happening anymore. It's just too much money, too much time, too much preparation. It eats away at a whole weekend that I could be making other things, pushing my practice in more ambitious ways, and or just resting so I don't go fucking nuts. So I'm not going to do that anymore. It was good. It was not without its merits. There were some quite profitable events over the past few years with that. And of course it was promotion, good networking, met some interesting people. That is all fine and dandy, and it's on the portfolio, but it's just with every other plan in tow at the moment, it's there are much greater priorities. So that's that done. Only other kind of key things from this year were just more personal, practical ones in terms of investing a lot of time and money in rectifying health issues, which I have had to the most part, with the exception of this thing I'm coming off the end of now. But that's the first time I've had anything like that in about 7 months, and it used to be a lot more frequently than that. So that's great, obviously on a personal level and a professional level. But practically, I do have to take stock of the fact that there was a lot of money spent on blood tests at the beginning of the year and a whole bunch of other therapeutic stuff, none of which I need to invest any money in anymore, because am more educated about that stuff myself, I have my own practice and approach to manage those things and look after my health better. That's all fine and good, but nevertheless, a lot of money was spent in 2019, and I will be slowly crawling out of debt because it was that physical therapy stuff, a bunch of camping equipment, which again, I own now. That will last me many years, but still, it all kind of culminated on this year, and then a few other things that were not cheap but were necessary at the time. Some of which relating to the art fair, which is just, yeah, again, like I said, takes a lot of time and money, but it's not going to be worth it. So yeah, those things will hopefully, amongst anything else, aside from anything else, that will mean a bit more interesting stuff coming out from my practice and trying new things because of that extra time on my hands. The alumni seminar, so I was talking about that talk, which is in a few months' time. I can't remember when exactly, but I'll announce it officially. That's an MA alumni event, and I'm mentioning that because I've requested to do a talk there, a presentation, and I've already said everything there was to say about that really. So that'll be exciting. The only other noteworthy date coming up after I finish the piece that I can't currently talk about is April, when I will be exhibiting some kind of installation at the Drill Hall. Now, I'm thinking at the moment it will be a video installation. Maybe there'll be 2D elements, but there might be a more kind of predominant showcase at the center of that would just take place on the opening night, if you like, or equivalent thing, however we're going to talk about that. Yes, beyond that, it's just all the things that I've mentioned, being somewhat frugal, just continuing at a more sensible pace, and I am, as always, open to potential begins with a C, collaboration, particularly the more we're moving towards technical multimedia kind of stuff. That's going to be very key, very central in my mind going into the new year. And developing technical fluency with the Adobe programs and maybe other things alongside that. But I really love to kind of flex this sort of creative potential on a bigger platform, not just this sort of insular me just making stuff and occasionally having exhibiting somewhere, but otherwise just projecting things online. That's all well and good, but I would like to get out there in one capacity or another, which is hard because you have to fill out all these applications that frankly, most of which people don't even look at, and all that kind of admin side of things. But that is where the final point of this presentation comes in, and that's continuing with the creative meetup group that I've initiated in Canterbury. If anyone in Canterbury does happen to be watching this, I warmly encourage you to come along. I haven't been able to confirm the next date yet, but sometime in January. Very simple format. We've hired out a cafe space, we meet up, we talk about what we're doing, whether you're an artist or just some aspirational, whatever your aspiration is really, come talk about what you do, or don't talk at all and just hang out and have a cup of tea and then maybe go for a drink afterwards. Simple thing, but I think Canterbury really needs, at least as far as I'm concerned, a bit more of a creative scene presence network, social network, so to speak, that isn't just some online group you like or join by a click. You know, need more resources where people are actually physically present and doing things and arranging things, maybe, and all of that sort of stuff. There's 100 reasons why that's an extremely good idea, not just for me, but for many people. So please do get in touch if you're interested in coming along to that. That is a wrap for this entry. All that remains to say is that I will write a more formal, professional, text-based explanation of the video, fairly short and to the point. I will upload that at some point. And I had also started writing a bit of a reflection on the recent Star Wars film, purely because as a compulsive fanboy, it warranted reflection for me over Christmas. It being the final chapter in this Skywalker saga. If you're not at all interested in Star Wars, then obviously that's not going to interest you very much. Even if you are, it might not interest you very much, because I know how divided a fan community it is now. But being someone who could talk in excess about why I love it and why I think it is significant creatively in many different ways, I can't not ramble on about it. So that will be a thing that I will do at some point and just blast out there for anyone who might share my opinion or not. That should be interesting. Okay, bye.